I drove home and opened my laptop. I had 3 folders on my external hard drive. One contained every version of the source code I'd written. The second contained commit logs showing my authorship timestamps. The third contained internal Slack messages, emails, and design documents where my boss had praised my work privately while claiming credit publicly. I'd been backing up everything for 14 months, not because I planned to leave, because I'd noticed a pattern. 6 months into my employment, the company filed its first provisional patent application. The invention was a routing algorithm I'd developed. My boss's name appeared as the sole inventor. My name didn't appear anywhere. I asked him about it in a one-on-one meeting. He said patent applications were strategic. He said the company needed a strong public face. He said my contribution was valued internally. I didn't argue. I started documenting. Every commit, every email, every Slack thread where I explained technical approaches, every design document I authored, every code review where others acknowledged my work. I created a timeline spreadsheet: date, artifact, description. By the time I left, the spreadsheet had 217 entries. I spent the rest of that Wednesday organizing the evidence into a single folder. I labeled it IP documentation. I uploaded it to 3 separate cloud storage services. Then I researched intellectual property attorneys in Vancouver. I didn't contact the company for 2 weeks. I didn't post on social media. I didn't tell former colleagues what I was planning. I applied for jobs. I went to interviews. I answered questions about why I'd left the startup. I said I was looking for new challenges. I said the timing felt right. I didn't mention the patents. During those 2 weeks, I reviewed my employment contract 7 times. It was a standard tech startup agreement, 12 pages. I'd signed it on my first day without reading it carefully. Section 7 covered intellectual property. It stated that all inventions, discoveries, and works created during my employment belonged to the company. Standard language. But Section 7.2 included a specific clause. Employee shall be listed as inventor on all patent applications for inventions where employee made a substantial contribution to conception or reduction to practice. I'd made the only contribution. Section 7.3 covered remedies. In the event of a dispute regarding inventorship, the matter shall be resolved through binding arbitration in accordance with the rules of the British Columbia International Commercial Arbitration Centre. I highlighted both sections. I scheduled consultations with 3 IP attorneys. The first attorney said I had a case, but it would be expensive. She estimated legal fees between $40,000 and $60,000. She said patent disputes took years. The second attorney said the same thing with different numbers. The third attorney was named David Nguyen. His office was in a converted warehouse near False Creek. He'd worked in patent law for 23 years. He reviewed my documentation for 40 minutes without speaking. Then he said I had one of the cleanest IP theft cases he'd seen in private employment. He said the evidence was comprehensive. He said the contract clause was clear. He said the company's Series A funding created leverage. I asked what he meant. He said venture capital firms conduct IP due diligence before investing. He said they review patent portfolios to ensure clean ownership. He said if there was a dispute over inventorship, it could delay or derail the funding. He said we could use that as negotiating pressure. I asked about costs. He said he'd take the case on contingency, 30% of any settlement or damages. I asked what he thought we could recover. He said it depended on the negotiation, but given the patent value and the funding pressure, he estimated between $200,000 and $500,000. I signed the retainer agreement that afternoon. David sent a formal demand letter to the company on a Monday morning. The letter was 4 pages. It outlined my contributions to the patented inventions. It cited specific code commits, design documents, and internal communications. It referenced Section 7.2 of my employment agreement. It requested that my name be added to all relevant patent applications within 14 days. It also stated that if the matter wasn't resolved, we would pursue arbitration and notify the company's investors of the IP dispute. David sent copies to 3 people: my former boss, the company's CEO, and their registered legal counsel. I didn't hear anything for 6 days. On day 7, David received a phone call from the company's outside counsel, a partner at a downtown corporate law firm. The attorney said the company disputed my claims. He said my work had been supervisory oversight, not inventive contribution. He said the patents were properly filed. David asked if they'd reviewed the documentation. The attorney said they had. David asked if they wanted to proceed to arbitration. The attorney said they'd get back to him. 2 days later, the company filed a motion to dismiss the arbitration demand. They argued that my employment had ended. They argued that I'd signed a release of claims in my exit paperwork. They argued that the arbitration clause didn't apply post-employment. David filed a response. He pointed out that the release I'd signed was a standard severance agreement. It didn't mention intellectual property. It didn't waive statutory or contractual rights related to inventorship. He attached the exit paperwork I'd signed. I'd kept a copy. The arbitrator ruled in our favor 3 weeks later. The case would proceed. The company's Series A funding was scheduled to close in 8 weeks. David knew this because venture capital term sheets are often public record once they're filed with securities regulators. He'd checked. He sent a second letter. This one went directly to the lead investor, a Silicon Valley firm that had led the $8 million round. The letter was carefully worded. It didn't make accusations. It simply informed the firm that there was an ongoing IP dispute regarding certain patents that formed the basis of the company's core technology. It provided case numbers and contact information. David sent me a copy. I read it 3 times. He'd attached a summary of the documentation: code commits, design documents, internal acknowledgments from other engineers. He'd made it factual and unavoidable. 2 days after the investor received the letter, David got a call from a different attorney. This one represented the venture capital firm. She said the firm was conducting additional due diligence. She asked for copies of all documentation related to the dispute. She asked for a timeline of my employment and contributions. David provided everything. The funding close was delayed. I heard about it through a former colleague. He sent me a text message. He said the company was in crisis mode. He said no one knew why the funding had stalled. I didn't reply. The arbitration was scheduled for 6 weeks out, but the company requested a settlement conference first. David said this was expected. He said the funding pressure was working. We met in a conference room at a neutral law office downtown. Glass walls, long table, 7 people present. On their side, my former boss, the CEO, their outside counsel, and an attorney from the venture capital firm. On my side, David and me. I wore the same clothes I'd worn to every job interview. Black pants, gray blazer, no jewelry. My former boss didn't look at me when I entered. The CEO opened the meeting. He said they wanted to resolve this efficiently. He said the company valued my contributions. He said there had been an administrative oversight regarding the patent applications. David said nothing. I said nothing. Their outside counsel presented an offer. They would add my name to the patent applications as a co-inventor. They would pay me $15,000 to cover legal fees and, acknowledge my contributions. I would sign a comprehensive release. I would agree not to discuss the matter publicly. David asked for a 15-minute recess. We moved to a smaller room down the hall. He said the offer was insulting. He said my inventorship was worth significantly more, especially given the company's valuation and the pending funding. He said we should counter at $400,000. I asked if that was realistic. He said the company would pay it to close the deal and save the funding. We returned to the conference room. David presented the counteroffer. $400,000. My name on all patent applications. A comprehensive mutual release. The CEO's expression didn't change. Their attorney said they'd need to discuss it. The meeting ended after 90 minutes. They came back 3 days later with a revised offer. $250,000. Co-inventorship on all patents, mutual release, confidentiality agreement. David said we'd consider it. He called me that evening. He said it was a reasonable settlement given the costs and timeline of arbitration. He said we could push for more, but it would take months and there were no guarantees. He said the decision was mine. I asked about the inventorship recognition. He said my name would appear on all current and future patent applications related to my work. It would be in the public record. It would be on my professional profile. I asked how quickly we could close. He said 2 weeks if I accepted. I thought about the Slack message, the laughing emojis, my boss's face during the exit interview. I said yes. The settlement agreement was signed on a Thursday. The company wired the payment the same day. $250,000, minus David's 30% contingency fee. I received $175,000. The patent applications were amended within a week. I checked the public database. My name now appeared as co-inventor on 4 patents. The technology covered logistics routing algorithms, predictive demand modeling, and warehouse optimization systems. My former boss's name was still there, but so was mine. The company's Series A funding closed 2 weeks later, $8 million. The press release mentioned the strong IP portfolio as a key factor. I didn't contact anyone from the company. I didn't post about the settlement. I moved the money into a brokerage account. I spent 3 days researching the startup ecosystem in Vancouver. I read term sheets. I studied cap tables. I learned about shareholder rights and equity structures. Then I called David. I asked if he knew anyone who specialized in private company investments. He gave me 2 names. I met with the first attorney the following Tuesday. Her name was Patricia Lim. She worked with angel investors and early-stage shareholders. I explained the situation. I had $175,000. The company I'd just settled with was now valued at roughly $40 million post-Series A. Their cap table included founder shares, employee options, and venture capital stakes. I asked if there was a secondary market for private company shares. She said there was. She said employees and early investors sometimes sold their equity before an IPO or acquisition. I asked if she could help me find sellers. She said she could make inquiries. 3 weeks later, she sent me a list. 4 people were willing to sell their shares. 3 former employees who'd left before the Series A. 1 early angel investor who wanted liquidity. The total shares available? 87,000. The price? $2 per share. I did the math. $174,000. I had $175,000. I asked Patricia about the process. She said we'd need right of first refusal waivers from the company. We'd need transfer approvals from the board. We'd need updated shareholder agreements. She said it would take time. I said I wasn't in a hurry. The company approved the share transfers 6 weeks later. They had no reason to block them. The sellers were selling to a third party. I wasn't an active employee with access to confidential information. I'd signed a settlement agreement that resolved all disputes. The board approved the transfers in a routine vote. My former boss abstained. He didn't know who was buying the shares. The company didn't disclose the purchaser's identity in the approval documents. The transactions closed on a Friday in September. I became the owner of 87,000 shares. Patricia helped me review the post-Series A cap table. The company had issued 2 million shares total. The founders owned 42%. The Series A investors owned 38%. Employees and early investors owned the remaining 20%. My 87,000 shares represented 4.35% of the company. I was the 7th largest shareholder. I had board observer rights according to the shareholder agreement. Any shareholder with more than 3% could attend board meetings as a non-voting observer. I didn't exercise the right immediately. I waited. The company announced a Series B fundraise 4 months later, $15 million at a $90 million valuation. The term sheet included standard provisions: board seats for new investors, anti-dilution protections, liquidation preferences. It also included a provision requiring approval from shareholders holding at least 75% of the outstanding shares. The founders held 42%. The Series A investors held 38%. They needed votes from other shareholders to reach 75%. I received the voting materials by email on a Wednesday. The email came from the company's legal counsel. It listed all shareholders and their voting rights. My name appeared 7th on the list. Valerie Chen, 87,000 shares, 4.35%. I read the Series B term sheet carefully. The new investors were a reputable growth equity firm. The valuation was fair. The use of funds made sense. I had no reason to oppose it. But I had a question. I emailed the company's legal counsel. I asked if board observers would be permitted to attend the shareholder meeting where the Series B would be discussed. The attorney replied within an hour. Yes, board observers could attend. I confirmed my attendance. The meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday at 10 a.m., downtown office, 12th floor conference room. I arrived at 9:55 a.m. Security called upstairs. Someone came down to escort me. The CEO met me at the conference room door. He recognized me immediately. He didn't say anything. He showed me to a seat at the side of the table. There were 11 people in the room. The CEO, my former boss, 3 other executives, 4 investor representatives, the company's outside counsel, and me. My former boss sat across the table. He looked at me for the first time since the settlement meeting. His expression was careful, controlled. I didn't smile. I didn't speak. I took notes while the CEO presented the Series B terms. The meeting lasted 45 minutes. At the end, the CEO asked if there were any questions. I raised my hand. I asked about the IP portfolio. I asked if all patents were properly filed with correct inventorship. The CEO said yes. I asked if there were any outstanding disputes. He said no. I said thank you. I voted in favor of the Series B. The measure passed with 89% approval. I attended every board meeting for the next 8 months as an observer. I didn't speak unless asked a direct question. I took notes. I watched my former boss present product updates, hiring plans, and revenue projections. He never acknowledged me. The company grew. 40 employees became 70. Revenue doubled. They signed contracts with 3 major logistics companies. The patents I'd co-invented became the foundation of every product they sold. My name was on the public filings. My shares increased in value. When the company was acquired 18 months later for $130 million, my 4.35% stake was worth $5.6 million. I received the acquisition payment on a Tuesday morning. I was sitting in the same cafe where I'd sat the day after I was fired. The bank notification appeared on my phone. I finished my coffee. I didn't celebrate. I walked 3 blocks to my car and drove home. They'd mocked my exit with laughing emojis and jokes about being barely noticed. I'd become the 7th largest shareholder before they knew my name was on the voting list. I closed my laptop and looked out the window at Vancouver's skyline. The screenshots I'd taken 18 months earlier were still in a folder on my desktop. I never needed to use them again.